Cecile is a permanent 5-star windminer caster unit who uses the rapid fire variant. A former knight of Alberia alongside Leaf and Holly, the horrors of war had made her turn her back on her knighthood, becoming a mercenary who has an addicting dependence on a substance known as a manachew. Design-wise, she looks like an alter version of Celery with polar opposite personalities. Her kit revolves around her dependence on manachew, it being required to deal damage with her skills, and also boosting her combat performance. Let's look into it and see how does this mechanic works. Both of Cecile's skills cost 6200 SP and fills half of her manachew gauge. When both of these skills are used, while the manachew gauge has yet to be completely depleted, they convert into their damage dealing variants. Her first damage dealing skill variant, Scatterfall, deals 2190% damage and inflicts Stormlash. It is a typical damage dealing skill that can also inflict afflictions, this one having high damage modifiers and above average SP cost. Overall, an average skill with good damage, high cost, and an interesting prerequisite of activation. Her second damage dealing skill variant, Poison Blast, deals 2137% damage and inflict poison. It can also grant Cecile a strength amp with a maximum team amp level of 2. My opinion of this skill is the same as the one on her first skill, but the addition of strength amp makes this skill slightly better. Both of these skills do pretty much the same thing, but her skills show that she is able to inflict both Stormlash and Poison, making her one of the 2 units that can do so. This makes her a relatively valuable unit in a team as an affliction dealer. Cecile's co-abilities are the standard gauge accelerator ability for mana caster units, accompanied by an 8% water resist boost when successfully inflicting Stormlash. This chain co-ability isn't all that impressive, and also gets harder to achieve when fighting in longer battles. Let's look at her 3 abilities. Cecile has 2 unique abilities, accompanied by Bog Resist, which may be arguably slightly better than Freeze Resist, as Bog can increase damage received by units by 50%. Her first unique ability is called Potent Placebo, a fitting name, as the manachew doesn't really have any physiological effect on her, but rather a psychological effect. This ability is the one that grants Cecile the manachew gauge. This gauge can only begin to deplete when it becomes completely filled, and grants Cecile the following: access to Scatterfall and Poison Blast, 20% defense, 10% skill damage, 8% skill haste, and an enhanced force strike, which is around 6% more powerful than a standard rapid fire manacaster force strike. Additionally, while she is using her force strikes, she can iframe enemy attacks like how skills do. When successfully iframed with her force strike, she gains a 10% charge on her manachew gauge. This ability is quite powerful, fitting to its name. The buffs she gets are really good, but the force strike is one of her greatest assets. It not only allows her to continuously use her force strike without being disrupted by most attacks, it also provides a third option besides her skills, in filling her manachew gauge. As the dodge doesn't have a cooldown, she can get her gauge filled up relatively quickly, especially when dealing with an aggressive opponent, unless the opponent uses purple attacks. Her second unique ability synchronizes incredibly well with her Potent Placebo, her Dodge Charge. Dodge Charge fills both of her own skill gauges by 20% when Cecile successfully dodges an attack, and has a 15-second cooldown. With her skills having a relatively high SP cost at 6200 SP, this ability, plus the 8% skill haste from Potent Placebo, negates the high SP cost of her skills. Cecile's role in the team will definitely be a main DPS, with the ability to inflict both Stormlash and Poison. Her force strike though isn't really as powerful as Galileo and Garlet Shell to perform OD shredding, so she won't really be having that role. When building her, focus on building up her offensive stats, such as skill damage, strength, and both crit rate and crit damage. Depending on what dragon which teammates, and what shared skills she is paired with, the viability of both stormlash and poison punishes can vary. As for skill haste, it's up to you. She has sufficient skill haste already when her manachew bar is depleting, which takes 30 seconds to completely deplete, plus the 20% skill prep that she can get when dodging iframeable attacks during her enhanced force strike. If you are a skill spammer though, and doesn't use her force strikes that often, then a slight amount of additional skill haste can get her going. For her dragon of choice, since she can inflict 2 types of damage over time afflictions, the latest dragon, Gala Beast Voke, is the most suitable, and also the most broken option for Cecile. Not only does Voke have an insane 100% strength increase for win units, but he can also double the chance of inflicting all forms of afflictions, increase the duration of poison and stormlash by 30%, and also deal 15% increased damage towards enemies afflicted with both stormlash and poison. Of course, all this power comes at a cost. Anyone equipped with Voke will have their affliction resistances utterly destroyed, so be very careful and mindful with your status effects when using Voke as a dragon on Cecile. Besides Voke, Reborn Zephyr and Majard Sorma Zero are next in line for the best dragons for Cecile, as they provide her with a lot of offensive boosts. For farmable options, Veo is the best option among them, providing a lot of skill damage. Other dragons that provide offensive stats can work well with her too. For team compositions, since she doesn't have any skill that can reduce affliction resistance of enemies, having a teammate with such skill on a team with her is recommended. As of now, for poison, Halloween Melsa and Formal Noel have skills that can do just that. There isn't really any other unit that can do the same with Stormlash for the moment. Other than that, her team composition is quite flexible. If she has Beast Voke equipped though, some changes may be required. As she becomes susceptible to afflictions, she'll need additional defense and better healing to survive. Templar Hope will be the best teammate in this regard, not only due to the defense boost, but also the team-wide healing double buff that he possesses. For healers, Lowen and Akasha are great options, the former having superb healing, defense boosting, and even able to increase maximum HP, while the latter having over damage and the ability to fill the skill gauges of teammates. For her Wimprints, if I were to have her, these are what I would equip on her, focusing on her offensive stats, and dealing additional damage to poisoned enemies. This is on the condition that I either have Halloween Melsa shared skill on her, or having Halloween Melsa directly in the same team. Unfortunately, I'll be skipping her, for I'm saving all of my Wimites and tickets for the next Gala Dragalia. Cecile is basically a much more complex version of Formal Huakim, both being mana caster units, and having the ability to inflict both poison and stormlash. Cecile brings incomparably higher damage output, and a relatively fresh yet interesting playstyle that is quite viable in endgame content. This may be expected, as units that debut in prize showcases in the past have shown to be relatively strong in terms of DPS, support, or both combined. She does have one glaring weakness though, which is her SP cost. Despite having countermeasures that can negate the high SP costs of her skills, it will be hard to use this character effectively if you don't have an idea on how she should be played. She must have her manachew gauge filled as quickly as possible, and while it is depleting, use force strikes to iframeable attacks to gain more SP for her own skills. This way, she can have a consistently faster access to her skills. Overall, Cecile is an awesome unit in providing both damage and affliction support. I would highly recommend her, especially if you don't have good win damage over time applicators. Now go out there and draw parallels between Cecile and some war veterans. From my observations, both have PTSD from their time during service, with some war veterans ending up in substance addiction as a coping mechanism to said PTSD. Like these veterans, she needs help. With the help of Leaf, Pataya, and others in the Halidom, let's hope that she can finally be able to truly get back up on her feet, facing her past head on, and start life anew as a new member of the White Sparrow Knights. That's all from me. Moga out.